Well, today we have somebody new. I gave Skip the day off, and he's like, "Hey, I don't have to record the podcast today." But George Miller is here from Cloud Readiness, one of my fellow Pitch It contestants. And I gotta say, he nailed his pitch. But I'm glad he didn't do a, he didn't get picked over me. I'm sorry, George. But you nailed it. Like I had my in my head the list of people I thought I'd be up there with, and the guys with sales experience. I was like, these guys are going to crush me. I've got to bring my A game because these guys can speak and sell themselves without even a thought. That's
Well,
why I had all my gizmos up there.
well, I tell you, you did an unbelievable job, and you earned the right to be on stage in several weeks from now. So, congratulations on that.
We'll see what happens on stage. I'll probably trip over myself. I'll have to pick your brain on good ways to do stage performance. I can stand on stage. I've got the ego for it, but will I stand out against other people? That's where you have these salespeople who just know how to work a room. So today we're talking kind of like that. Like we're talking about why your meetings suck. Why your clients avoid your meetings. And George and I were having a great conversation about this. I was like, this should be a podcast because we do cover this a lot, and it's a thing near and dear to my heart. When I watch these webinars and I watch these vendors come up with great ways to have a QBR, and they're wrong. Their heart's in the right place, but they're wrong because they're coming from a technical background and they don't see the bigger picture. So we're going to do a little two-parter here. Today, we're going to set up the problem of why your clients are not coming to your meetings, why they actively avoid your meetings. And in part two, we're going to talk about how we solve that problem as just a salesperson, as a CIO level employee, like what brings people back into those meetings. So George, tell me a little about yourself and why you care about QBRs and strategic meetings so much.
Well, Adam, thanks. Well, I come from a background where I've either run or participated in MSPs and in solution providers for a number of years, well over 40 years. And over the last several years, I've had the luxury of being invited into many, many meetings with MSPs to sort of understand what they're doing in those meetings, critique and provide after action comments on how they did. And quite frankly, most of the meetings I attend are duds. And, I hate to say
getting out of a meeting where you wish you could be anywhere else.
And literally, I would say a high percentage, well into the 80% of these meetings are literally meetings that nobody would want to be there except for the person presenting. Unfortunately, everybody else around the table would like the meeting to last 5 minutes, and unfortunately, it's scheduled for an hour. And to tell you the truth, at the end of the day, no value, nothing to take away. Literally, a use of an hour that most people would see as totally unproductive.
I have a theory on why that is, because you ever notice when you have these meetings, they're 60 minutes and it's full, but it's full of meaninglessness. And I have this theory, and I want to incorporate it into my pitch in November, is that we are taught from a very young age to listen, to sit in a chair and watch the person up front show us how things are done. And by the time we get out of high school or college or whichever direction you went in life, you are just conditioned to sit there for 50 minutes and listen to somebody. So when you get to the other side, you're like, I need to disseminate information. You do the same thing that everybody did to you for the past 18 years. And that is talk to the group, let them digest it, and come back to you when they get done. And there is no difference between that and doing a video recording. You might as well have just recorded yourself talking and send it in an email or post it to YouTube as a private share. And then people could watch it when they have time, rather than you wasting their time with non-conversation, a one-way street. The best salespeople I see in the world are people where you get out of the meeting and you're like, that was a sales meeting? We just talked about dogs and we talked about our cars for half an hour. But dang it, I really want their product now.
Oh yeah. How great would it be for any of the people in the audience to run a meeting where literally the people you're speaking to are on the edge of their seats. They're excited, right? They're engaged, right? And you just don't see it. And that's why, these people don't want to have that next meeting with you.
Meetings don't have to be terrible, people. I'm telling you this, but just because you have a history of going into meetings and wishing you weren't there, the number of times I've heard an engineer say, I just want to do my job. And they get sucked into a meeting or they get sucked into some kind of bureaucracy. And I just want to do my job. A salesperson, I just want to talk to them about my product. And we get there by not understanding that this meeting is supposed to be a meeting. It's not a attendance. This is a meeting of people to discuss ideas. And we've taken the discussion out of it because discussion is hard. And facilitating a good discussion is hard. But if you've ever been in a meeting with a great meeting facilitator, it is night and day. Go attend an EOS implementer meeting and you will see what I'm talking about. They're everywhere. They're in every town. Google EOS implementation or EOS implementer and sit in a meeting with one of these guys or girls, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that is so much better. And when I used to make the mistake of sitting in a meeting and just talking and disseminating information, I would try to pull information out of people in the group, like, oh, it's Bob's turn to talk. It's Alice's turn to talk. And I would go around, do a round table. Round tables are evil, people. What is good is, do you know why this person's in your meeting? Okay, you invited them because they have some information that you need to know. And so then you have that conversation. And this is if you could get this person and this person in a room together and get them to talk to each other, now you have even better meeting because everybody's learning from the conversations that are happening in the room.
Yep. Totally agreed. And again, that is one of the big, huge missing elements, right? Which is, right, the purpose of a meeting, right, is to convey information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get to a point where you're making typically a decision or there's some sort of action that needs to happen as a result of the meeting, because continuous update meetings on status, right, can be done in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Right?
Status updates are easy. They're simple and they should be quick. Right. And that's why, like, that meeting tool I showed you that we're trying to develop, it's going to take a little while to get it done. Yep. But the idea is to time box that. So when you talk about tickets or status updates, it has to be done in 5 minutes. So if whatever you have does not fit into 5 minutes, it's a separate meeting. And that changes the way things are. So I took over a board, a nonprofit board a couple of years ago. And Adam Walter hates meetings. I have clinically diagnosed ADHD. I do not sit still well. And I took over the meeting and I started doing like the level 10 format, and I kind of fudged it around a bit so that it fit the style of these meetings. They started off, these meetings were like 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, once a quarter, of us talking about operational updates for this nonprofit. I came in my first meeting, I go, all right, people, it's going to be 90 minutes. Here's the agenda. If you have anything else on it that you did not put on the agenda, we'll discuss it after. But there will be no vote. And that got people like submitting to me ahead of time. Like, oh my gosh, I need my stuff talked about. Like, because we go off on all these tangents that went nowhere. And then at the end of the meeting, nothing got decided. No, the point of this board meeting is to do votes and to discuss important items that the directors need to move forward on, not for us to sit around and hem and haw. So when I did that 90-minute meeting, it was bam, 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 bam. And we got done. We did our elections. We did our votes and we got done. And I go, all right, guys, we're done. We've only got 2 minutes left. Oh, people kept trying to talk. Nope, what, 1 minute left. And then I shut it off. I shut the meeting down. I said, I'm calling the meeting to an end. Can I get a second? Got a second. Closed. No more votes. And like everybody just kind of sat there for a second. And one of the ladies looks over me and goes, that may be one of the best meetings I've ever been to.
Yeah. Can you imagine the overwhelming probably feeling was we actually attended a meeting and got something done.
I even hired my new sales guy, and he came into our first like level 10 meeting. Like we have a weekly meeting where we talk about what's going on, what's everybody working on, where are we at on our overarching goals, just a good OML 3-4 level meeting. And we're a small company, but it's still important. And he gets done and goes, that may be one of the best meetings I've ever been to. Like, it's because you were valued. It's because we listened to you, even being a new employee. And we had an agenda. And at the end, we had action items and we solved problems. And then we walked away with this valued meeting. And I now know what I need to do the rest of the week. And I know how what I'm doing is fitting into the overarching plan. And I'm constantly reminded that this is my annual goal. And this is how I'm fitting into this bigger plan. So now I have purpose and I have an action items and I have a list I can go through. Everybody's happy then. But meetings today between a technical person and their client are all about the technology dog and pony show. And it's wrong. I can tell you, we were just talking a little bit ago. Like, I think a lot of the problems is that a lot of these people who are running these meetings have never been in a C-level meeting before. So I'm going to ask you, George, how did you get used to meeting with C-level execs? How did you kind of flip your narrative from this is a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo to here's what we actually care about?
Well, I think the epiphany I had, and again, many moons ago, was the fact that after about when I became a little bit more self aware, let's say, it became very, very valid to me that the person across the table basically was losing interest in everything I was talking about, right? Because I wasn't connecting with them. B, the information I was providing was irrelevant, right? It had no impact because I was talking techno speak to a non-technical person, right? And at the end of the day, that person's frame and what they're interested in had no relevance on what I was talking, right? Essentially, I was spinning my propeller, proving how smart I was as a technician or a technical person, and not really connecting with the fact that this person has a business to run. Their key elements that they use to run this business are not coming to the table. Ergo, they were checking out about 10 minutes into every meeting.
Yeah, they knew they needed to be there. They're polite and they know this meeting's important. But if you ever can switch that narrative where all of a sudden your contact is engaged, it's a different feeling in the conversation. It's a different situation. So I was talking to my kids the other day, and I use my kids all the time on the podcast to tell stories. Is my daughter was bored in English class. She couldn't stay focused. I said, do you know why you can't stay focused? There is a trick to it. There's one simple trick to turning a classroom from boring, no matter what it is. I don't care if you're talking about underwater pottery, basket weaving, or whatever it is. One trick is ask a question. If you can ask a question in a meeting, the meeting suddenly becomes interesting because now it's becoming personal. Now you're engaged. You can't sit there and stare at somebody and force yourself to be engaged. You can force yourself to give eye contact. You can force yourself to have good body language. You cannot tell your neurons, this is important. I should listen to this. You can say that mantra as much as you want. You won't get your neurons to engage until it becomes personal and relatable, and you can't relate until you ask a question. And so when you ask that question, when you have that personal, whether even if it's just, hey, tell me about your favorite color of Transformers, whatever it is, engage with the person across the table or the entire room, which is why there's all these gimmicks in the corporate world of icebreakers. Tell me about the best part of your day. So a great segue is I use all the time is what's the best thing that happened to you this week? And everybody goes around the table and just says it, just kind of warm everybody up. But now immediately they're engaged because they contributed to the meeting right off the bat. And you got to do it with your client. This person across the table, can you tell me what the biggest risk to their company is right now?
Yeah.
If you can't, why should they care about what you have to say?
Yeah, and most can't, and that's a big problem because, as you said, most of the folks when they go into these meetings, whatever type of meeting it is, typically they believe the meeting's about them versus the person across the table, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
And the first thing I'll always ask is, hey, forget why I'm here, right? What do you want to have come away from this 20-minute, 30-minute, 50-minute meeting, right? What would make this worth your time? Right? Because I want you to leave this meeting saying, this was a great use of my time. I either learned some things, I got the information I needed, or you conquered some issue we were up against, right? And at least we have next steps, right? So, I just really spun around my whole approach, and I'm going back, a couple dozen years ago, basically to say, I'm in the meeting, but the meeting's not about me. It's about my customer and what's important to them, right? And not what's important to me.
A great meeting facilitator gets the room to talk. A great meeting facilitator doesn't need to know and be the expert. The great meeting facilitator understands that the people in the room are the experts, and their job is to get them to talk. And in your, if you know, I make fun of people all the time. Salespeople know this intuitively. It seems. I know there's bad salespeople out there, but I sing the praises of salespeople all the time, because you've got to have a transformation into from somebody in this meeting. You need to be able to look into this meeting and say, what are we going to get out of it, and how are we going to engage, and how can I include everybody in the meeting? And so you watch a really good gregarious salesperson, and they're going to engage with you. They're going to find out what your car is, what the thing you care about is, what's your favorite sports team, and they're going to relate that to the product they have and how it's going to help you with that. And that's a good sales experience. And I think I wish I could teach technical people that, but we're so used to being the smartest person in the room, we don't realize that we're the smartest person in the room in an engineering setting. And I tell people, if you've been in a room with a controller or a CFO, I guarantee you're not the smartest person in the room. You may be out of context, but you're not the smartest person in that room. And that person there is the one who's making the decisions. And you need to figure out what they care about so you can empathize with them, because they've got a business to run just like you do. And if somebody came in and started talking to you about how great QuickBooks was, and how the QuickBooks is going to do all these things, and it's going to be awesome, and it's going to categorize this and this and this, and it's going to run your P&L reports for you, and it's also going to allow you to have better layouts for this and this and this, and you're sitting as an MSP trying to figure out how to win over your next client, you don't care about QuickBooks. It's important. It's interesting, but right now you need 3 more clients to cover your budget gap. Or maybe your problem is right now everybody is having a hard time hiring. You as an MSP are like, how do I hire engineers? How do I find these engineers? Because we've got a shortage out there right now. And if I come in and talk to you about QuickBooks, that's not helping me with my number one problem. But if I can use QuickBooks to show you how you can find efficiencies in your existing employees so you don't have to hire as many, or maybe you can use it for time tracking to make things a little bit nicer. Now you're interested in QuickBooks because it's solving the problem for you. Or maybe how to find comparable salaries so that you can hire people and you become an employer of choice. Now you care. And with technology, we got those things, but you're not listening to the person across the table. Are they trying to make a better dog kennel? Are they trying to sell more candy bars? And how does your solution fall into that? And you look out there, and a lot of the meeting tools, like, I don't like to bash my competitors. They all have wonderful values in different areas. But you look at what they're doing, and it's largely spreadsheets, and it's largely data analysis. It's not relational. It's not about the person across the table. It's about their assets. Like, the eyes are up here, people.
Yeah.
In the corporate world, we have a term, and it's a little bit inappropriate. We call it manager porn. Are you familiar with this phrase?
Yep.
And it's the idea that you can put really beautiful data on a screen that you love looking at that means absolutely nothing. It has zero value. And we call it manager porn. And you will sit, if I as a manager have sat through so many meetings staring at pie charts and graphs and non-actionable data that looked absolutely gorgeous, that data scientists worked on for hours so they could present it to the decision makers, where a engineer put together this wonderful flow, these great cacti reports, this glorious stuff, and they put a lot of effort into it. And I say, so what do I do with this? And the room's quiet. Well, you can see the graphs going up. Yes, I see the graphs going up. It's a pretty green too. But what do you want me to decide off of this? What decision do I need to make? But it's showing you how much bandwidth you're using. Cool. Is there a problem?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the biggest thing, and you hit on it earlier, I'll just use a little different wording on it. But I mean, one of the things that I'm constantly talking about MSPs about is, again, if you're talking to another technical person and you're doing tech speak, fantastic. You'll be humming along with a meeting because you'll both love what you're talking about. But the minute somebody else enters the room with a different role, it turns everything upside down. And the biggest thing we try and work with people on is basically to say, listen, if you understand the role, you understand how they speak. And their language is different than your language. And if you can learn the language of the role, but whether that be a CFO, a CMO, the head of sales, somebody who's in operations, runs manufacturing, and you understand, how they dialogue and what's important to them, the conversations are far greater than they'll ever be. And you'll actually start to run meetings where people are locked in and sort of hanging on your words, as long as you can connect the information you have or viewpoints to their ultimate problem, or basically help them understand more about technology in their world than they do themselves.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a little plug in for your guys' solution here. Like, you guys are in the automation of cloud-based subscriptions, right?
Yeah, we basically, by and large, we help MSPs and folks like that understand how to live in a subscription world and get their business pivoted to subscription so that they don't tie themselves in knots and trip over themselves trying to create this business.
Yeah. So the reason I want to call that out right now and why it's relevant here is that when you're making something like this simple, you take this complex knot, and you could spend 2 or 3 sessions with a client trying to untangle this mess of subscription based models. If you make it simple, you can use the rest of your meeting to get to know the client and then match the subscriptions to them that matter. Because in this world, there are millions of subscriptions that you can tie yourself to. Which ones do your clients care about? Or are you selling them the ones that give you the biggest profit margins?
Right.
Are you selling the ones where you're a preferred partner? These are things that you need to think about in your meetings, because your client is thinking about them. That's their mindset. They're trying to figure out, how do I solve this problem? And I have in my career many times come across a situation where a problem existed and there was a technology solution that was very simple, but no one asked the question. So the client had been doing this thing manually and had been going in the wrong direction for so long. And they could have, like, hey, do you know that exists as a service? Did you know that, like, for like $5 a month, I can make that problem go away forever? Even mileage tracking using what? Pencil and paper? There is a way to do it automatically, people. It's wonderful. In fact, you're probably already paying for it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty. Is like, as we automate this, as we make things simpler in technology, automate your technology conversations. Automate those. Don't automate your QBRs. Don't automate your strategy. Keep that human being there to facilitate the conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in part 2, where we say, how do you have a great conversation and still cover the material that you need to as a technician? And there is a number of tricks to do that. And so we'll do that next week. So we'll see you in a few there, George.
Hey, great to be with you, Adam.